The chandelier lights sparkled like frozen stars above the grand ballroom of the Royal Crest Hotel. The room pulsed with music, laughter, and the clinking of champagne glasses. Every guest here was someone, an elite figure of wealth, influence, or legacy. But among them, one woman stood out. She moved with the kind of grace that demanded silence rather than attention. Draped in an obsidian gown that shimmered like liquid midnight, her presence seemed effortless, yet powerful. Her face was framed by soft waves of chestnut hair, her expression unreadable, her eyes a mystery even the boldest couldn't solve. No one knew her name. Rumors had begun swirling weeks before the event. A new billionaire had appeared on the philanthropy circuit, silent, strategic, and stunning. She had donated millions to children's hospitals, rebuilt women's shelters, and even acquired 2 collapsing tech firms, saving hundreds of jobs. But no interviews, no red carpet poses, no personal disclosures. She was the ghost in gold. Across the room, he noticed her. Dressed in an impeccably tailored tuxedo, Damian Reed swirled his drink absently as his eyes locked on the stranger. There was something hauntingly familiar in the way she tilted her head, the way she paused before sipping from her glass. A flicker of something, regret, curiosity, confusion, passed across his face. "Who is she?" he asked the man beside him. "No idea," the friend replied, shrugging. "But rumor is, she could buy and sell this entire room." Damian's smirk faded. He couldn't place her, but something inside him stirred, like a forgotten name brushing against memory. She didn't look at him. Not yet. But she knew he had seen her. Her lips curled ever so slightly, not in malice, but in acknowledgement. Tonight was not for revenge. Not yet. It was only the beginning. He had no idea she once loved him more than life itself. Before the diamonds and designer gowns, before the boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, she was just Alina. A girl with paint-stained fingers, ink-smeared notebooks, and eyes that saw beauty in broken things. Her world was simple. She lived with her mother in a modest 2-bedroom apartment above a flower shop they barely managed to keep open. Mornings smelled of fresh lilies and brewed tea, while nights echoed with her mother's humming and the clatter of dreams stitched together with hope. Alina had always been a dreamer, studying by day, working by night, and creating in between. She had a scholarship to a small design school downtown, and her professors often said she had an eye for color and soul. But talent didn't pay the bills. And life didn't always reward the good-hearted. Then came him. Damian Reed wasn't the richest man in the room, not yet, but he carried himself like the world already belonged to him. Confident. Sharp. Charismatic in that dangerously effortless way. He walked into her life one rainy evening when the shop's heater had broken, and the flowers were drooping with cold. She had been rearranging a bouquet of half-wilted roses when he entered. His umbrella dripped water onto the tile floor, but he offered a smile so disarming, she forgot the chill. "You look like you could use some warmth," he had said, offering her a takeaway coffee without asking. He came back the next day. And the day after. Sometimes to buy flowers, sometimes just to talk. He learned she loved Vincent van Gogh and couldn't stand crowded places. She learned he was an ambitious finance student with big plans and no time for distractions, except her. He made her feel seen. Important. Like someone who mattered in a world that often overlooked girls like her. When he kissed her for the first time in the back room of the shop, she thought her heart might explode. It was messy and unexpected, but to her, it felt like poetry. Alina fell hard. She canceled art exhibits to attend his networking events. Worked double shifts to surprise him with gifts he never really cared for. She believed in his dreams more than he did. Every time he fell short, she picked him up, pushed him forward. Every time he lied, she forgave. Every warning she heard, from her friends, her mother, her gut, she ignored. Because love, real love, was blind. And she loved him blindly. She believed his stories about being close to closing million-dollar deals, even when he couldn't afford rent. She gave him the last of her savings when he said an investor backed out last minute. She defended him when others called him manipulative, selfish, dangerous. "I know him," she would say with certainty. "He's not like that." But he was. She just hadn't seen it yet. The fall was still far away. For now, in her eyes, Damien was the dream worth chasing. And she would chase him, no matter the cost. At first, the cracks were too small to notice. A missed call. A vague answer. A change in tone. But love, especially the kind Alina gave, was a powerful blindfold. Damien began canceling plans more often, always with urgent business meetings or investor dinners. He'd go silent for hours, sometimes even days, only to return with charm and flowers, making her feel foolish for ever worrying. He knew exactly what to say, how to kiss away her questions. Alina's friends noticed the shift before she did. "You've changed," her best friend Mara said one afternoon at the cafe where they used to meet weekly. "You're always tired, and I barely see you anymore." "He's isolating you." "He's just busy," Alina replied, stirring her tea a little too fast. "He's trying to build something for us." "For you, or for him?" She didn't answer. She didn't want to. Because the truth, whispered too early, can shatter everything you're trying to protect. Her mother, always gentle with her warnings, tried too. "Love should lift you," she said one night as they stood folding laundry together. "But this seems to weigh you down." Alina brushed it off with a tired smile. "He's under pressure. He'll come around." But deep inside, she was starting to notice things too. He never talked about the future with her in it. He never said we, only I. He never asked about her day, her dreams, her designs. His affection came in waves, hot, cold, and always on his terms. Still, she told herself it was love. That it was just a phase. That the man she fell for was still there, buried beneath the stress of ambition. She kept making excuses. When he forgot her birthday, she told herself he was overworked. When she found an unfamiliar earring in his car, he laughed it off as his sister's. When he dismissed her artwork as a cute hobby, she laughed along, pretending it didn't sting. But it did. Every red flag planted itself in her heart like a silent warning, but she refused to listen. Because sometimes, it's easier to stay blind than to face the truth, that the person you love most might be the one slowly unraveling you. And so, she clung to the hope that it would all be worth it. That loving him, supporting him, sacrificing for him, would one day pay off. That if she just held on long enough, he'd see her worth. But in reality, she was holding on to someone who had already let go. It happened on a Thursday. One of those ordinary, forgettable days that would go on to brand itself into Alina's memory like a scar she couldn't scrub clean. She had spent the week preparing a surprise for Damien, her savings had finally matured, and she planned to invest it into the small business idea he had casually mentioned months ago, a boutique consultancy firm. She designed the logo, crafted the pitch deck, and even secured a meeting with an angel investor through one of her art professors. She wanted to show him she was more than just a supportive girlfriend, she was his partner, his equal. She arrived at his apartment unannounced, a habit she knew he didn't love, but this time, she wanted the moment to be spontaneous. Romantic. A surprise. But the real surprise was waiting for her. The door wasn't locked. She stepped inside with a cheerful call of his name, holding a small cake in one hand and a file of documents in the other. His voice didn't answer her. Instead, a different sound filled the silence, laughter. A woman's laughter. Soft. Intimate. Alina froze. The hallway stretched out like a tunnel leading to something she wasn't ready to face, but her feet moved anyway. As she reached the doorway to the bedroom, time slowed. There, wrapped in satin sheets, was Damien, shirtless, relaxed, and entirely too comfortable, with a woman Alina had never seen before curled against him like she belonged there. For a moment, no one spoke. The other woman pulled the sheet higher, startled. Damien's eyes met Alina's, not with panic, but irritation. "You weren't supposed to be here," he said flatly. That was all. No explanation. No apology. Just the annoyance of being interrupted. Alina stood frozen, the cake box trembling in her hand. She blinked rapidly, as if the scene might dissolve if she refused to believe it hard enough. But reality had no mercy. "Who is she?" the woman in the bed whispered. Damien shrugged. "No one. Just someone I used to date." Her stomach turned. Alina dropped the cake, the box thudding against the hardwood floor with a dull finality. The sweetness that was meant to celebrate their shared future now bled across the ground like a cruel metaphor. She ran. The next hours blurred. She didn't remember the streets she walked, or when it started to rain, or how she ended up sitting on a bench in the middle of downtown, soaked and shaking. All she remembered was the sound of his voice, so cold, so dismissive, calling her no one. But the betrayal didn't end there. The next day, she received an email from her bank. Her savings account, nearly every dollar she had, was empty. She logged into the joint investment account she and Damien had opened months ago, one he had convinced her to let him manage because finance is my thing, babe. It was drained. The name on the withdrawal request was his. Panic turned into nausea. She tried calling him, once, twice, 15 times, but he blocked her number. Just like that. No closure, no remorse. Just silence. Within days, she learned through a mutual acquaintance that Damien had registered a new company, his company, using her concept, her research, even the pitch deck she created. And the final blow? He was engaged. The same woman from the bed. Her family was wealthy, politically connected, and rumored to be bankrolling his new venture. Alina couldn't breathe. Everything she had poured into him, her trust, her love, her time, her money, was stripped away, leaving her hollow. Her artwork, neglected for months, stared at her from dusty corners like ghosts of the girl she used to be. Her mother, heartbroken but furious, tried to console her, but Alina couldn't hear anything beyond the ringing in her ears. She had given him everything. And he had used it to build a life with someone else. For days, she didn't eat. She barely slept. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, asking herself the same question over and over again, how could he do this to me? But there was no answer. Only silence. And in that silence, something inside her began to break. Not like a shattering glass, but like the quiet splitting of a shell, revealing something harder beneath. The girl who had loved him blindly was gone. And in her place, something new was starting to rise. Days turned into weeks, and Alina barely noticed the passage of time. Grief had a way of distorting reality, making the sunrise feel meaningless, food tasteless, and laughter from nearby strangers feel like echoes from another life. Her body moved through daily motions, but her soul was absent, locked somewhere in the past, trying to understand what she had done to deserve the wreckage Damien had left behind. Her apartment, once filled with soft music and sketches scattered across every surface, had gone still. Dust gathered on her easel. The flowers from her mother's shop, which she used to bring home every Friday, no longer arrived. Alina had stopped answering calls. She couldn't bear the pity in people's voices. It only made the weight on her chest heavier. Rent notices began piling at her door. With her accounts emptied and her job at the flower shop barely covering groceries, she was forced to sell her laptop and most of her art supplies. Each possession she parted with felt like a limb being torn off. Piece by piece, her identity slipped through her fingers. Even her reflection changed. The once bright eyes now seemed hollow, ringed with sleepless nights and dried tears. She didn't wear makeup anymore. Didn't bother fixing her hair. What was the point? The hardest part wasn't losing the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the realization that she had lost herself. That she had given every ounce of her strength, love, and faith to someone who saw her as disposable. She began walking at night, aimlessly wandering the city until her legs gave out. She'd sit on benches, watching strangers laugh, lovers hold hands, children chase pigeons, wondering how the world could keep turning while she stood so completely still inside. One night, as she stood on the bridge above the river, Cold wind brushing her cheeks, hands gripping the rail, she let the thought creep in, what if I just disappeared? The thought terrified her. Not because it was dark, but because it felt so easy. But something, maybe the memory of her mother's laugh, maybe the faint whisper of the girl she used to be, kept her feet rooted to the ground. She didn't jump. She turned around. And for the first time in weeks, Alina whispered to herself, this isn't where it ends. Not yet. The fall had broken her, yes. But sometimes, hitting rock bottom is the only way to discover the fire buried underneath. Rock bottom wasn't a place, it was a decision point. And for Alina, the decision came quietly, without a grand epiphany or dramatic turning point. It began with a breath. A deep, full breath on a cold morning, followed by the slow, stubborn act of getting out of bed. Her body ached, her heart still bruised, but she was no longer willing to be Damien's leftover story. She would write a new one where she was the protagonist, not the victim. The transformation wasn't instant. She started small, cleaning the apartment, selling old clothes online, taking odd freelance jobs just to keep the lights on. She knew nothing about business, but she was hungry to learn. She signed up for free online courses, read articles, joined forums. Nights once filled with tears and silence were now spent watching lectures and scribbling ideas into notebooks. Slowly, her mind shifted from pain to purpose. She worked during the day as a receptionist at a design firm, a job far below her talent but enough to keep her afloat. And though the position was minor, it placed her close to something she loved, creativity. She watched designers pitch branding campaigns, witnessed how ideas turned into income, and most importantly, she listened. She studied their confidence, their strategy, and began to imagine herself not just on the sidelines, but at the center. The turning point came in the form of a woman named Evelyn Monroe, the CEO of a boutique fashion label and one of the firm's top clients. Sharp-tongued, impeccably dressed, and unapologetically successful, Evelyn was the kind of woman who walked into a room like she owned it, and often, she did. One afternoon, during a chaotic scheduling conflict, Alina stepped in to fix a crisis involving misplaced design files. She handled it calmly, professionally, even offered a creative suggestion that improved the campaign. Evelyn noticed. "You're wasted behind a desk," she said flatly, sliding a card across the counter. "Come see me next week. I might have something better." That meeting changed everything. Evelyn became more than a mentor, she became the catalyst for Alina's ascent. Under her wing, Alina was given opportunities to assist on campaigns, manage clients, and eventually pitch her own designs. The business world was cutthroat, but Alina had learned resilience the hard way. And now, instead of crumbling under pressure, she sharpened under it. 3 years passed. By the time she turned 28, Alina had launched her own creative branding agency. What started in a rented co-working space with borrowed capital became a multimillion-dollar business. Her agency catered to elite brands, startups, and private clients alike. Her signature style, emotive, minimalist, and bold, quickly became sought after. But she kept a low profile. No interviews. No flashy parties. Her face remained mostly unknown. She let the work speak for her, and it roared. Behind the scenes, she began acquiring properties and investing smartly. Her financial instinct, once naive, had become razor sharp. She learned how to negotiate, how to listen, and, most of all, how to walk away from anything that didn't serve her growth. She also changed physically. Not drastically, but intentionally. Her once soft eyes now carried steel beneath the calm. Her voice was controlled, thoughtful, laced with the kind of poise that couldn't be faked. She dressed with quiet power, tailored suits, muted colors, and subtle luxury. And though she still smiled, it was never given freely. It had to be earned. Alina was no longer the girl who begged to be seen. She owned her place in the world now. And through all of it, she never once looked back at Damien. Never searched his name, never lingered on thoughts of revenge. Until one day, she came across a news headline. Damien Reed's company facing bankruptcy amid scandal. She stared at the screen, heart still, expression unreadable. She didn't feel joy. She didn't feel hate. She just felt done. It wasn't vengeance she had chased all these years. It was freedom. And now, she finally had it. The city hadn't changed much. Same skyline, same crowded streets, same old whispers of ambition floating in the air. But Alina had changed, so completely, so profoundly, that even the familiar roads felt foreign beneath her heels. She returned not as a girl searching for belonging, but as a woman who owned every room she stepped into. Her company had just closed a major deal, one that gave her control over a chain of luxury retail spaces in the heart of the business district. What no one realized, at least not yet, was that one of those acquisitions included the struggling firm once run by Damian Reed. It had come up quietly in a distressed asset sale. The firm was floundering, riddled with lawsuits, debts, and scandal. But beneath the mess, Alina saw opportunity. Not in the company itself, but in the message. Buying it was symbolic. She didn't announce her presence. There were no press releases, no social media posts. She entered the building with quiet confidence, flanked by her legal team, her head held high. No one recognized her. The receptionist offered a nervous smile, unsure if she was a client or an investor. No one could tell. That's how she liked it. Damian, however, would find out soon enough. Her name was on the documents he would receive later that week. In bold, black ink. Majority ownership transferred, Alina V. Sterling. Sterling, the name she adopted after her grandmother, the woman who taught her dignity even in suffering. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of her new office, one that used to be Damian's, and looked down at the city below. He had once stood here, drunk on ambition and arrogance, thinking he had won. And now, without lifting a finger in spite, she had reclaimed every inch of what he stole, and more. Her assistant knocked gently. "Mr. Reed is requesting a meeting. He doesn't know who you are yet, just that you're the new owner." Alina smiled faintly, not in triumph, but in peace. "Schedule it," she said, turning away from the window. "Let's see how well he handles déjà vu." Damian Reed walked into the boardroom with the same swagger he had always carried, though it was noticeably less polished now. His tailored suit couldn't quite hide the stress etched into his posture, nor could his cologne mask the scent of desperation that lingered behind every forced smile. He had no idea who he was about to meet. The room was sleek and modern, with a long obsidian table and panoramic views of the city skyline. At the far end, seated in a high-backed leather chair, was a woman he didn't recognize, yet something about her unsettled him. She rose slowly, confidently. Her figure was graceful, posture flawless, presence undeniable. "Mr. Reed," she said calmly, her voice low and velvety. "Thank you for coming." Damian extended a hand, flashing his signature grin. "You must be Miss Sterling. I've heard almost nothing about you." She shook his hand briefly, coolly. "I tend to let my work speak." "Right," he chuckled, trying to read her. "Your acquisition caught us off guard, I'll admit. Your team moves fast." Her eyes never left his. "I believe in precision. Clean cuts. No room for delay in business, or otherwise." He shifted uncomfortably. There was something about her tone. It wasn't hostile. But it wasn't friendly, either. It was familiar. Maddeningly familiar. She gestured for him to sit. "Let's talk about your future under this firm. Or if there will be one." Damian laughed nervously. "I built this company from the ground up. You bought it at its weakest. That doesn't erase what I created." She tilted her head slightly. "Did you build it, or did you steal it?" His smile froze. "What?" "You heard me." There was silence, long and sharp. He studied her face again, eyes narrowing. And suddenly, his breath caught. Her jawline. Her eyes. The way she pronounced her words, measured, deliberate, with that slight upward curl at the ends. His pulse quickened. Alina, he whispered. She didn't flinch. He stood, stepping forward like a man reaching out to a ghost. It's you. Yes, she said, voice unwavering. It's me. The woman you called no one. The one you stole from. Lied to. Left. Damien paled. I thought you disappeared. You never answered. Because I was done, she interrupted. You don't get to rewrite the story now, Damien. You wrote your version when you betrayed me. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. For the first time, Damien Reed was speechless. Alina stepped closer, her tone low and deadly calm. You see, I didn't come back to destroy you. That would be too easy. I came back to own what you thought I'd never be strong enough to take. She leaned in. I came back as a stranger. One you never saw coming. Damien's throat tightened. Why now? Because I don't owe you silence anymore. She turned toward the door, her heels echoing with finality. The meeting's over. You can find your things boxed and ready by the hour. He stood frozen as she walked away, back straight, head high. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Because the past had finally caught up. And she had left it behind on her terms. The charity gala was grander than the last, held in a glass-ceilinged atrium overlooking the city's skyline, attended by the most powerful names in business, politics, and media. Champagne flowed like water, and the air buzzed with soft laughter, whispered deals, and careful admiration. Alina arrived alone. No escort. No press team. Just herself, wrapped in a floor-length emerald silk gown, her hair pulled back to reveal the sharp lines of her face and the fire in her eyes. She had been attending these events more openly now, allowing the world to see her success instead of simply feeling its effects. Tonight was different, though. Tonight, Damien would see her. Word had already spread that Alina Sterling was the billionaire behind the recent corporate shakeup. That the once unknown investor had swiftly, silently taken over multiple firms, including the one Damien Reed had nearly destroyed. He was there, of course, standing near the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey, trying to blend into the crowd that once cheered his name. His suit looked expensive, but nothing could mask the dullness behind his eyes. Failure clung to him like cologne left too long on the skin. When he saw her across the room, his expression twisted. Shock first. Then admiration. Then something almost desperate. He made his way toward her. Alina, he said softly, as if her name still held weight in his mouth. She turned to face him. Her expression was unreadable, a carefully constructed mask of grace and power. Damien. You look, he trailed off, unsure if he should say beautiful or unrecognizable or untouchable. She gave him no help. Different, she offered. Yes, he admitted. In every way. There was a beat of silence between them, filled with everything he never said and everything she no longer needed to hear. Why didn't you ever come back, he asked, voice lower. Why didn't you ever try to fix what we had? She tilted her head slightly, eyes calm and clear. Because it wasn't broken, Damien. It was never real. I just refused to see it. He swallowed. I was young. Stupid. I didn't know what I had. No, she said quietly. You knew exactly what you had. You just didn't think I'd ever become more than the girl you could lie to. Around them, the room carried on, oblivious to the quiet reckoning between two people once bound by history. Do you hate me? He asked, a flicker of hope in his voice, as if hatred would still mean he mattered. Alina gave a soft, almost pitying smile. No, Damien. I don't hate you. I don't feel anything for you. That hit harder than anything else could have. She stepped past him, but paused just long enough to say one final thing over her shoulder. I once loved you blindly. But now, I see everything. And I finally see myself. He turned to watch her go, this time not as the girl he dismissed, but as the woman he never truly knew. And never would. The morning after the gala was calm. No headlines screamed her name. No interviews requested a quote. But something deep inside Alina had shifted, something final, something free. She stood on the balcony of her penthouse apartment, a mug of tea in hand, watching the sun rise over the city that once swallowed her whole. Only now, she stood above it, not in pride, but in peace. For years, she had carried the weight of what Damien did to her like a wound she couldn't stop reopening. She thought becoming powerful would ease the pain. That building an empire would make the betrayal disappear. But revenge was never the cure. It was healing that had made her whole again. Healing didn't come from taking him down, it came from rising without needing to. It came from reclaiming her identity, her voice, her purpose. From learning to love herself more fiercely than she had ever loved anyone else. She no longer woke up with the ache of unanswered questions. No longer whispered what if into the silence of her nights. She no longer missed the girl who loved blindly. Because that girl hadn't been weak, she had simply not known her worth. Now, she did. Her days were filled with meaning again, mentoring young women, investing in shelters, funding art programs in schools like the one she once couldn't afford. Her agency continued to grow, now run by a capable team she trusted completely. She had built a legacy that went beyond profits. And then there was Elias. A gentle, quiet soul she had met at a panel discussion on social impact investing. He was nothing like Damien. He didn't try to dominate a room or impress her with hollow charm. He asked questions. He listened. He remembered the names of her favorite authors and once brought her a copy of Letters to a Young Poet with a handwritten note tucked inside. They weren't in love yet. But it was something new. Something honest. And that, to her, was enough for now. She thought of Damien sometimes, not with anger, but with distance. Like a chapter from a book she no longer read. She knew he was still trying to salvage what was left of his career, clawing at the walls of his own downfall. She wished him nothing. Not success. Not failure. Just silence. She glanced at her reflection in the glass, strong posture, quiet smile, eyes that had seen too much and still softened with compassion. Alina turned away from the view and stepped back into her home. There were no ghosts left to haunt her. No debts left to pay. She hadn't come back to ruin him. She had come back to find herself, and she had. And in the end, that was the greatest power of all.